Listen.
This is the Black Country Blokes chewing the fat about everything that is mental health. Now, we're not experts, but we are experienced, so we're encouraging you to share your experience, because every experience is worth sharing, so please be part of the conversation.
Listen.
Avignac, this is the Black Country Blokes chewing the fat about everything that is mental health, disability and life in general. With me, Kev Dillon, Lee Cadman, and one of my favourite guests we've ever had on our podcast, Cheri Gilligan. So thank you, sis, for coming on. What we're going to do, as we always do, we're going to start the show, as we always do, our support group at the Lions, every Wednesday, 7pm till 9pm. And that's what I'm grateful for this week. And I'd have to say, I've got 3 lads fighting in the Nationals. I've got Osman Mohammed fighting the quarterfinals tomorrow. And if he wins, he'll join Ben Collins and Matthew Ford on Saturday in the semis. And then, by the grace of God, they all win, and then we're to the finals. If we get to the finals and we win the finals, brilliant. If not, we've done blooming brilliant to get here. So I'm grateful for that. And obviously it takes a little bit of luck, but the best friend of luck is hard work. Luck will get you there, but the hard work will make it pay off in the end. Lee?
I'm grateful because my daughter was ill after the show last week, but she's come out of it. She's come out of it well. We only had 1 day in hospital, which makes a nice change, and I'm grateful because that's probably in 2 years, maybe a bit more than 2 years. That's the first time we've had to phone an ambulance, and it used to be. It reminds you of these things, but it used to be probably at least once every 2 weeks when she was first diagnosed that we'd phoned an ambulance. So we've come a long way since then, and that's reminded me how far we've come.
I said to you though, Lee, it was a shock to the system, though, isn't it? Because our minds are brilliant. We forget how scary those situations can be, don't we?
Definitely, it was definitely a reminder of that as well. How hard it has been in the past, and I'm not sure if I ever got used to it, but I've certainly got out of used to it now. If that makes sense, it's certainly very foreign to me again. Having ambulance people turn up and whatnot. But as I say, it also reminded me how far we've come, and it's a very long way.
Touch wood, stay well. Cheri, what have you got to be grateful for, apart from seeing Lee in his lovely suit?
I'm very grateful to be here and to be invited to be on the show. But what I'm really grateful for this week is a trainer. I don't know if I'm getting muffled. Is that better?
Yeah.
So a trainer called Jane Donahoe, who led a training session at work this week and last week, and it was about stress and well-being and vicarious trauma. And you know when a trainer is energized and enthusiastic and passionate about what they're delivering, she was just fully loaded like that. So she just, I don't know, it just felt really affirming and positive and engaging and encouraging. And yeah, so she did a mop-up session just for me and my colleague today, and it was just, it was brilliant. So I just feel really grateful for her.
Isn't it great when you do things like that and you actually come out uplifted and energised? I've done many courses for work, and some of them you just come out and you're like, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah.
I'm glad that, nodding off halfway through. But then ones that really do inspire and uplift you are fantastic.
Yeah, really.
You can say some people are born to teach, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Like something, it's like their performance, their platform, their stage where they come alive.
Yes.
And what was she doing? Can you tell us a bit about it, please?
Yeah, it was about frontline workers basically, and how to recognise stress and manage stress, and also to acknowledge that, as compassionate human beings, and Black Country Blokes, you represent that, when you're hearing and witnessing other people's pain, it lands for us. It can't not, you can't not care about somebody's suffering and then walk away and just be like, okay, that just happened, and forget about it. We don't do that. So, do you remember when we did our mental health first aid training and they talked about it's sucking out the poison?
And what you do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. What you do with it. So this was a look at what's the impact on you, and then what's your self-care about? What does that look like? And the importance and significance of that. So yeah, and it was just how she did it. she's really engaged with the work, you know, and she talked about her own journey, and so her insight is influenced by her own journey, but her compassion and presence for other people, you know, really came through. So I love that. You know, when somebody's actually being as they're teaching, yeah, there's no incongruence in it, that they are being exactly what they say.
And it's amazing when someone is so passionate about something, even if you're not interested about it, you feel fired up on that as well, don't
Yeah,
you?
you do.
And you learn then, you learn about that thing. Whether you do anything with it after is another thing, but you take that in and you go, ah, you know what, that was really engaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that throwaway thing of self-care, self-wellbeing, wellness, happiness, we hear it everywhere, don't we? Look after yourself, take time for yourself, but that can be the hardest thing, isn't it? And when you're someone who naturally sucking out the poison of everyone, man, woman, goat and insect, but then what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest lessons, isn't it? What
Yeah.
you find?
Yeah. Yeah. I think often we talk about self-care as something else that has to be done, when more than anything for me, it seems like self-care is about taking stuff off my plate and taking stuff off my to-do list and taking stuff more easy and being at ease with stepping back and not doing anything, and giving yourself permission to do absolutely nothing, you know, more of the time, because, you know, like you, like we like to be busy, we like to be doing stuff, we like to be involved in things, but actually it's that restorative bit, isn't it? Like, you know, take a break and be okay with taking a break. You know, watch a box set, don't do anything, have a duvet day. Like, it's not the additional doing, it's the chance for you to be in a space and just take a moment, be at ease with it.
Someone once told me there's a difference, and we've all been there, when you're revising and you're reading and nothing's going in. You read the same piece of paper 400 times, but no word sinks in. That's being busy, and there's a difference between busy and constructive. Mm-hmm. Constructive is going, you know what, today I'm going to watch the football, I'm going to watch EastEnders, I'm going to go boxing, I'm going to do whatever, and when I'm ready, I'll read it, and that's when my brain is ready to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And recognising when we are in stress mode, that part of the brain that receives information in that kind of intellectual way that's not the part of our brain that's online when we're stressed, you know? Like, we're in our emotional brains, aren't we, when we're stressed, you know? Fight and flight is activated, or we're kind of in that state, but we're not in that kind of conscious, you know, intellectual frame of mind. And like, noticing that, you mentioned this before about self-awareness and being tuned into yourself enough to know, actually, I need a break, this is not going in right now, let me put down the book and go for a walk, let me walk the dog, or just go outside and look at the sky, take a few deep breaths, just come away from it and allow the system to calm down, and then you can be receptive again.
And self-awareness comes with, I'm about to lose my temper. Self-awareness, I'm about to reach for the cigarettes. No matter what it is, it's being self-aware about it. And I think that's part of the journey, because we all have cravings, we all have impulses, but I think with age comes wisdom, and then you start noticing, I've been here before, can I change what I'm going to do next?
Yes. Yeah, lovely.
And we were saying earlier, and I was saying on the show, I found this for myself by talking to wonderful people, and I'm going down a gratitude route at the moment. And as we say a lot of the time, I've got to be grateful for my three lads who are in the ABAs. I've got to be grateful of my Lions Box Club. I've got to be grateful for... And you go, hang on. I've got to be grateful that I can put my own socks on. I am grateful that when I go to the toilet, it flushes. I'm grateful. And gratitude hasn't got to be about these major booms. It's the little things. And I talked to Lee and like with little Calla, the other day, my daughter was poorly. And she was having nightmares, and I woke up and, did what Daddy does. I snuggled her and cuddled her and I kissed her, and I was having every time I went back to sleep, she'd cry out for me. And then I thought about my old pal here, who'd been having it for weeks upon weeks with his daughter, and I just felt so grateful that it was an upset tummy and she's having nightmares, and it was that gratitude. But do you know what I'm trying to say? It's finding things in life and you go, it ain't as bad as it seems right in this moment. And I think that's with the fight and flight, and we've all been there with our partners, you're trying to win the argument instead of keeping a relationship. You know what I mean? And what you say and what you do, it's like you're having a boxing match and you're landing big bombs to win, and you think, but what cost if I won that argument?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you found that, Cheri?
Yeah. I learned something a couple of years ago. I think it came from, maybe she's called Deb Schofield. I can't, Deb something, but anyway. And the question she asked was, what's not wrong right now? Because sometimes gratitude is too far away from people. And again, just acknowledging, if you're in a real funk, like the part of the brain that kind of processes that kind of level of analysis and searching, like isn't the one that's online, if you like. So if you can ask yourself, like, what's not wrong right now? When it looks like everything is, oh, my life's falling apart, the cat, the dog, the missus, the whatever. What's not wrong? And it might be, well, what's not wrong right now is I can see.
Yeah.
Okay, my sight is still working, I can hear. My hearing's still, okay, so that's not wrong. My heart's still beating, okay, that's not wrong right now. And I might still not be in gratitude mode. I'm just noticing what's not wrong.
That's very similar to, we had Dr. Annie Barney from Gravy Banana on, and she said exactly the same in a slightly different way. She says when you stub your toe in the morning, you notice all the bad things that's going on, kind of like a car. You buy a red car and you see 3,000 red cars.
That's
exactly the same as yours.
Yeah.
It's the same theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just kind of slightly flipped, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you physically making your brain see what's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think there's the yin with the yang and all this. But if we program our minds thinking, all the youth, they're so rude, and all the old uns, they're so selfish, we see that.
Yes.
And everyone is out to get me.
Yes.
Never trust anyone. But then when you stop, because I work with a lot of children at the lines, and they're remarkable. And when you start seeing good in people, it's the same, like if someone pushes into you, you're more likely to go and push into the next person. Or someone cuts you up on the road, you'll cut someone up. But if you say, morning, the first person might stare at you thinking, what's he after? But it's contagious. Emotions are contagious. Anxiety, nerves are contagious. Anger, frustration, contagious. But so is love and kindness. And more we can put that out there, hopefully some of that sticks.
Yeah.
And doesn't that show the importance of the people you keep around you? And how your mind frame can change and adjust because you are around the right people in your life, or the wrong people. It goes both ways, and that kind of shows you how the youth can get misplaced because you're hanging around with the wrong guys, and it creates a bad atmosphere. People notice that atmosphere, and then you're labelled as something that you probably aren't.
Well, it's like fear. A lot of people do suffer fear. I know all my trouble of getting into trouble was because I was a frightened boy, but I didn't want to show the world I was a frightened boy, so I was kicking off, shouting, fighting, because that was my disguise, my superhero mask of not getting picked on. It was great when we had Noel Farrell, who's a GB boxer who will be coming on the show very soon, and he was saying nerves, and you walk around a change room at boxing, some are being sick, some are walking around laughing, joking. It's just people are using a different disguise to hide the same thing that we're all going through. And that's why I think that's where fear has got many different masks, hasn't it, Cheri?
Yeah, 100%. And what you're both saying is really connected, isn't it? Because we hear a lot, don't we, about ACEs and childhood trauma, and I think about the kid who's suffering at home, who goes to school and has to mask up at school because they don't want anybody to work out or find out what's going on at home. And or the child who goes to school and behaves badly at school, quote unquote badly, because there's nightmare stuff going on at home, and how they get marginalised at school then, and then you can see how things like kids get excluded, maybe end up in prison, because once you're marginalised, once you've been like frozen out, like who else have you got to play with except the other kids who've been frozen out? And a lot of those kids have got, ACEs 6, 7, 8, 9, really high adverse childhood experience, significant trauma. So I think that's what connects what both of you were saying for me is the behaviour and the fear, and how those two things play out. Like we can cover it up with positives, seemingly positive, more socially acceptable behaviours, or we can go the other way, can't we?
And I think the way is, we're going to get rid of sexism, racism, prejudice, is we've got to teach our children better. And earlier we can teach them, the better. Mm-hmm. And education just hasn't got to be at school. We can't put everything on to teachers. Mm-hmm. The teachers are there to teach you ABCs and they overworked, underpaid. But then we've got to expect the parents to teach you. But how can a parent teach it if he or she was never taught it?
Yeah.
So where are we going to get this education from?
Yeah.
And that's why I love like boxing clubs, football clubs, dojos, because you might be the one who teaches that person differently.
Yes.
And a teacher comes in many different forms, be it a lecturer, be it now in the world of YouTubes and Instagrams. So if it's positive and it's reaching to you, let that be your KRS-One, let that be your lecturer, whoever it is, and cipher what is right.
Yeah.
Lee?
Yeah, you're right, Kev. You're exactly right, and I think there's a real importance to people who actually put content out there, and whether they realise it or not is another thing. But there really is, because the kids are getting on tablets, phones, all that's coming in earlier into people's lives, and they're lasting longer on it. They're on it for more time. So it's very important that anyone who puts content out there, that it's for the good.
I think for good and being genuine. Be good because you're good, not just because you'll get clicks.
Yeah.
I think we see a lot of that.
Yeah, being real.
Well, Lee, I think if we go to a couple of songs now, Cheri has gladly picked out the songs today, so when we come back for the songs, we're going to ask her why she picked that, and then get into the story. And we're back with Cheri Gilligan. And Cheri, do you mind telling us what songs, for those who will be watching this on YouTube, what songs you picked and why you picked them?
Okay, so we started, I think, I'm going to get this wrong, aren't I? I'm going to say we started with Ghetto Heaven, but we didn't. We started with Sister Sledge, We Are Family. And this is because, like, I look back at a certain time of my life with a cohort of friends in Liverpool. All, we were young and free, and we were all creative, and just the future just looked full of possibility. It looks full of possibility, and our track is We Are Family, so that's why I played that, because it was just our tune, and days of sitting on verandas and going out clubbing and drinking rum and coke and dancing till o'clock in the morning and not a care in the world, really. And then Ghetto Heaven by Family Stand. And I chose that because it reminds me of when I was young, and we would go to this caravan park, and we would have dance battles between us, and that was just one of the tunes that we would kind of dance off. And the great thing about that is, oftentimes you got beat. You got beat. So, you had to learn some new moves and come better next week for the new people that arrived. So it reminded me, actually, that there's some resilience in that, isn't there? Taking a beating and then coming back a bit better, so... so, yeah. Then Real Love, Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige was the first concert that I went to. She was at the Manchester Arena, so, oh my God, this is like how old I am. It must have been over 20 years ago anyway. But just a phenomenal... She's a tiny little dot, but she's a powerhouse. She's got a phenomenal voice, a phenomenal story. And, that whole album, What's the 411, was like... oh, it was an amazing album. You know, I was a black woman, like, and I was just a young black girl then. It was like, I don't know, she was aspirational for us, you know. And that was the kind of open the windows, play the music loud, don't care if you upset the neighbours. that they were those days. And then street life. So, just thinking about a story really. So, I ran away from home when I was 15, from Liverpool all the way down to London. And I was down there for 6 months. And when I hear that song, Street Life, I remember my experience of like being a runaway kid, you know. And it's mad now that I work with like young homeless people. You know, I didn't join those dots at all until I was there, kind of going, no way. Yeah, so street life reminds me that, you know, I've lived a mad life, you know, but here I am to tell the tale by the grace of something.
And it's great how music can do that, can't it? Transport you back to those places, and the smile and the beam on your face now when you're describing what these songs mean to you is fantastic.
I love music for that. I love music for that. Like, so we were talking today about, again, the kind of nervous system and this particular nerve that everybody's talking about now, your vagus nerve. And it's a vagus nerve because it's wandering, isn't it? It goes through all the body, longest nerve, and it goes, bunches up around your heart, bunches up in your gut. You know, talk about gut feelings and your heart and your head, brain, so all of those things. Anyway, one of the things that they ask you to do when you're looking at like your own well-being is to track what makes you feel good. So I have a playlist called Ventral Vagal, which is just like, it doesn't sound like a cool term at all, but being in a positive state is like that ventral kind of state in your nervous system. So I made a playlist called Ventral Vagal, and all of the tunes that are on that playlist are like uplifting, remind me of something positive and powerful, and then it just lifts me up. And everybody's got that, haven't they? You know, if any listener hasn't already done that, put a playlist together of songs that make them feel good. Do it. Just do it. It's well worth doing. It's a great exercise.
I always quite like the earworm, and because like when I'm on mental journey once again, I'll have a sad song, Hurt by Johnny Cash, and I'll hear it in my head, and once again, being self-aware, I know that I'm spiralling, so I have to purposely go, whoa, stop, change the record, and then I'll change it to rudimental, not giving in, or something like that. But I have to physically, mentally, change the record.
Yes.
And maybe that's another great thing. Like once I work with, it says, once again, to diet, what we put into our system. And it goes, to have like your favourite movie poster or family pictures or pictures of your children, whatever it is, like some of us are auditory, like music, some are visual, whatever it is, you know you better than I will ever know you.
Yeah.
Find what makes you happy and surround yourself by it.
Yes. It's good medicine. It really, really is.
But Cheri, I'm on about like you leaving home at 15, 20. Tell us about Cheri Gilligan. Tell us about the story.
So, I was born in Liverpool to a Irish woman, and my dad is Jamaican. This is like 70s Liverpool. And you know, we talk about adverse childhood experience, a really difficult dynamic in that, for her anyway, in her life. So her children were taken off her. So I was taken, and the other two kids was taken, and then we were back and forth in these different places. And I ended up in a long-term foster family anyway. And this was the family that I ended up running away from. And I ran away to London. And you know, when you think back, like, what possessed you to do that? 15-year-old girl. And I must have looked about 10 because I was tiny. Like, what possessed you to do that? To put yourself at risk and to not even recognise that I was putting myself at risk. It looked to me like I was going towards something better, something safer, getting away from what have you. And 6 months I was down there. Sometimes I was street homeless. Sometimes I slept in a car park. I used to go to them times. There used to be a vigil outside the South African embassy because like apartheid hadn't ended then, right? And there was it was a 24-hour vigil, so I would sometimes be outside there on the night time as well. I ended up getting a job working. Ended up getting like accommodation in some like women's hostel down there. But also had some dreadful experience, as you would expect a 15-year-old girl on her own in London to have. Like, what on earth were you thinking? And sometimes, doing the job that I'm doing now, which is like young people's street homelessness, there were some dots that I hadn't joined in my own experience. You hear stories or you go on a training program and you think, oh my days, like I've lived through that. And I didn't call it that then, or I didn't recognise it as that. So, yeah, man. So that was a big deal, but I was found and taken back to Liverpool. So the police found me. I was in Paddington Police Station overnight, took back to Liverpool. And then I had this runaway label for a while. That was really embarrassing. Yeah, he was the kid that ran away and all of that. So, when you think about like what shaped you in your life, like that shaped me a lot.
What, the running away? Or?
Yeah, well, the running away, the surviving in London. So I had a sense then when I came back that I could survive, which maybe I didn't know that before.
Which is a great lesson.
Yeah,
I think you almost thrive there as well, in the sense that you've managed to go down there, find accommodation, and get a job.
Yeah,
that's not just you're living off the streets and you're scrapping away. No doubt there was some of that, but it's also actually I've gone up levels in 6 months.
Yeah. I think as well. I think I told you this story, right? So there was a photograph. So this is like so there was a photograph that got put in the newspapers, like a missing girl. I remember I was saying to you, I used to dance. I was a bad little dancer when I was young. So one of the photographs that was put out, I had this like plaited headband on because I'd been in this disco dancing competition. So one of the pictures for this missing girl had like this disco headband on it. And when you think, oh no. It's like, oh man. So like it's great, isn't it? You can look back at these things that were really maybe at the time quite painful and difficult, and you can see the funny side of them, and they're just part of your story, aren't they? And I think that I would have been mortified if my daughter had done that. Yeah, that's when you realise, that has impact on other people. That action, and at the same time you recognise that there's some healing and some progression made because my daughter didn't have to run away. Do you know what I mean? That even though there was stuff, she didn't have to run away. She didn't have that. That broken stuff was kind of on the mend.
I think the fear that it must have taken her to run away and the courage to back the fear is underrated as well, isn't it?
I think that there's lots of young people suffering now, and we don't hear about running away so much as we used to. When I was young, it seemed like it was maybe quite a common thing. There was loads of kids in London who'd run away, and also loads of kids who don't make it back. So I'm kind of holding on to this idea that there's a courage there, but more. What would have been more courageous? To have gone to somebody and said, "This is how things are. Help." That would have been really, really courageous. But I didn't know that was possible, and I didn't trust that help would have been available if I'd said so. Whereas today, I'm certain that if you go to somebody in your school, or if you go to, oftentimes it's like a friend's family member, you go to your friend's mom and you say, "This is how things are," that help will come. Whereas, I wasn't at all certain of that. Not at all.
And you'd like to believe that we have moved on from that, because when someone does reach out and tell you whatever's going on, you've got to believe the person, haven't you? You've got to try and get that person help.
Yeah.
And what we found by doing this show and different forms of abuse and circumstance, whatever, it comes in many different faces as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And no gender, sexuality, classism is immune to it.
No. And I grew up in one of these foster families whereby, like my mum, she was old school. Like, so you don't talk out of school. You don't air your dirty laundry. You certainly don't say anything's wrong here. Things can be wrong with them or in the neighbours, but nothing is wrong here. And the slightest suggestion that there was anything wrong, she would have taken it really personally, and like a casting some kind of aspersion on her caregiving. So, like, I'll give you a little example of that, because I had two half sisters, that when I went into foster care, they were with a different family, and she didn't want us to have any contact with them at all. And then when I was about 7, maybe 8, the social workers managed to arrange a visit. And so my little sister Mimi, I'll tell you about Mimi later on, but my little sister Mimi comes to visit. And, you know, I'm so delighted to see her, so happy to see her. But when she's taken away, I'm devastated. And my mum says, she's too upset. I don't want them to see each other again. And we never saw each other again until many years later. But that was my mum's kind of whole way of being, like, you're too upset, can't have any more of that. Yeah, like, no management, no space for big feelings, no processing of big feelings, no insight into, naturally you would feel that way, that's your relative, and you're going to, like, for her, the connection that I felt to my sister was like, meant there would be some disconnect with, you know, the foster family. So, like, I understand her protectiveness and, you know, so there was no, you know, what wasn't certainly not a place where you could go and say, okay, stuff's wrong here. She wouldn't have had it.
Now we expect that from a male point of view, don't we? And men can be closed off for their feelings, whereas we naturally assume that women are more maternal and more open with feelings, but it's not always the case, is it?
No, definitely not. And, you know, thinking about her story, she lost 2 babies of her own, like, way before she began fostering. So you could see then why big feelings would be difficult for her, right? Or grief in front of her, you know, would be difficult for her to allow, because, like you said before, you know, feelings are kind of catching, aren't they? There's something about resonance that happens, and yeah, like, she's not going to have that. She was funny as well. She wouldn't let us watch. Do you remember when Cilla Black used to do this program called Surprise Surprise?
Yeah.
And Cilla Black did this thing where it was like, she would help people find their long lost relatives.
I remember it.
Yeah. So my mum said she wouldn't let us watch it in case it made us curious. Like, we all know that this is not our family, right? We know we're all fostered and connected, like, by whatever, like that. But in her mind, if you watch that stuff, it would make you curious. And, you know, if you get curious about where you're
questions.
from, yeah, you know, that's problematic. So so I understand why 15-year-old me wasn't raising flags left, right and centre, because it wasn't the space to do that, you know.
I bet working in your line of work now with these people, because feelings are weird as well, aren't they? And how we remember something can be completely different how it actually was.
Absolutely.
And I imagine, like, you think, oh, they were the best times ever when we were down the park. And you go, well, was they? You know, when it was raining, we were all crammed under a slide, or school was great. You go, well, was it great? And like with this, like, I bet in your line of work now, talking to people and hearing experiences, and we hear so many people on a show and they go, I didn't know that I come from a messed up home life. It was normal.
Absolutely.
And it was only till I went around Bill's house and I seen how his mum and dad were, thinking, this ain't my house. But then he was encouraged that he didn't go to Bill's house because then he'd realise. And is that how you felt?
Yes, that was exactly how my mum would be as well. Exactly like that. A whole culture of, don't get too involved there and don't go over there. Or if you get... And I was one of those kids who... I would go to other people's houses and feel something different and want to stay. So I'd be the kid at your house crying, don't make me go home. And you'd be thinking, just go home. You're like, what's wrong with you? Nothing, just don't want to go. And then, you go home. And, so all of that. And if you did that, you're not going back there. You're not going back to Emira's again. No, you can't go back to Caroline's again. No, you can't. Because,
That's also for anyone who's listening to this. If you've got a friend of his child or whatever, and they don't want to go home, maybe it is an early sign to think, hang on, let's ask questions to the child, not to the parent. Because I know countless times where a child has told the teacher that mommy or daddy or nanny, whoever, is doing something, and then the teacher has phoned up mommy, daddy or nanny and told them what the child was saying about them.
Yeah.
So we've got to be careful about this situation, but start seeing the signs, and hopefully, it's us just worrying about nothing. But by worrying, maybe we can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people get that twisted, don't they? They're like, I don't want to interfere just in case they're not doing anything and the child's just acting out. But ultimately, you've got to think of it. If they are, you're then saving that child. So falling out with your friend for a few weeks to potentially save a child who's in distress, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. I think safe spaces, listening is the most important thing, isn't it? Just keep making a space and keep allowing and, tuning in and trusting your gut. That's really the thing. Because you do get a sense, don't you, that something's not quite right here, and you maybe can't put your finger on it. So trust your gut. I think it's so important.
So how old were you? So you've run away, you've been dragged back, and then how old were you when you left the family house?
So again, I left when I was 18, and that was on one of those funny rules, really, of as soon as you're 18, go.
That's crazy, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
We've looked at for you all this long, but you're 18 now. You're an adult.
Yeah,
You're done.
off you go.
We had to drag you back 6 months ago, but now it's your birthday, out on your ear.
Off you go. I left when I was 18. So that's where the song "We Are Family" comes in, right? Because, after I'd left and I think I was doing dancing drama at college, and so that's when I, got in touch with all the, like, the theatre in Liverpool was the Everyman, and there was just a crew of people, and we were just creative and hopeful about, and we were all very politically active as well. That's the other thing, kind of militant scousers who were mouthy and argumentative, and
Us against the world attitude.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And we really thought we could change the world back then as well. So I don't think about it now, it's hilarious, but
I think we all do in a way, to be quite honest. Just it's who you're changing the world for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's nice, that is, yeah.
So when did it start spiralling then?
So, probably, maybe I'm about 19, and I have been... So at 18, I go and have a look at my social services records. I want to know what happened, what occurred. So that's when I find out who my birth father is. That's when I found out, actually, how come I'd never seen Mimi again. It was as a result of reading those documents that I discovered that actually it was my mum who'd said, oh, she's too sad, don't make her see that cat child again. So there was something really dark about reading this file from social services, because it tells you about why you as a kid put in care anyway, what was wrong with family, that, you know, your birth family that meant you couldn't stay there, and what kind of condition you were in, all that kind of stuff. So that's really dark. It kind of really coloured my view about myself. I kind of reinforced some negative ideas I had about myself. So that was the first thing. And then I got burgled. So yeah, there was just this spiral. And I started using, like, I used to smoke weed, but I'd started using crack. Just kind of every now and again. With some really unsavoury characters as well. People, you just like, what are you doing? But it didn't look like that then. It looked like my kind of people. We were talking about it before, weren't we? You know, when you're traumatised, marginalised, you don't see it in yourself. It's your normal, you know. In fact, we were talking about it at work the other day. Like, professionals around a child or around a young person might say, oh, that kid's, you know, got really low self-esteem, they've got really low self. But in the lived experience of that person, it doesn't look that way to them. So, you know, to be ascribed that label wouldn't fit anyway. It's like, I'm just me, doing me, and living in my experience, and I can't see that these folks are unsavoury characters because they look like kind of cool to me. They look like they could defend me if something's going wrong. They look like we could run and would be all right. Do you know what I mean?
They're not going to judge me. They're doing it as well as me, so they're going to look down on me because they're part of the crew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you just, again, you're with a marginalised crew, aren't you? Really, because you know you've all got some things in common, whether it's spoken, acknowledged or not. You know, there's a resonance that maybe we're not necessarily talking about. So that, if you like, that was the beginning of the descent, really, into proper kind of madness. You know, I'm still trying to go to college. I'm going to university. I'm trying to put things together. But of course, you know, when I look at it now, I think, oh, you were trying so hard to put things together. You were trying so hard to become something and become somebody, and to go in the direction that you wanted to. But I didn't have the inner resources to realise it. So I get into this wonderful dance college, Laban. Like, there's a couple of top dance schools in the country, contemporary dance schools, London School, the Northern School, and Laban. So I get into Laban, and I'm a single mum, like, getting into Laban. Like, who even gave you the idea that, you know, who gave me the idea that I could do that? But it had a bolshiness about me, and I guess, you know, off I went, audition, I get in, and then there's this dilemma. You can't get a grant to go. So local authority back then said, we'll pay the fee for the school, but there won't be any kind of maintenance grant. So I went and had a conversation with my mum about, I've got into this dance college. I think Alicia was 94, so Alicia was 2, my daughter was 2. So we agreed, me and my mum, Alicia can stay with her for a year, 1 year. And then when she's 3, she'll join the nursery behind the dance college. But you know what? I went to London without my child. Worst mistake I ever made. And I hadn't foreseen that me without my daughter would leave me unanchored or something, but that was absolutely what it did.
Almost no responsibility.
Yeah.
Do what you like.
Yeah, but also, like, what are you doing? What is the point of anything? Like, things didn't make sense, but I didn't have maybe the language for that or the feeling of that. All I knew was that things weren't making sense. So using more frequently, and it just fell over. I went to, you know, like school holidays and stuff like that. So I want to see my daughter. But my mum's taking her away because she's got, you know, she's looking after her. And I feel like an outsider in my daughter's life. And at this point, my version of events is, I haven't done anything wrong. You know, she's not your child, she's my child. Like, I don't get it. But of course, all that activated in me is shame. Guilt. Yeah. So now I'm not functioning well at all. And before I know it, like, I'm using every day, all day, flat out. I ended up with a crack addiction, heroin addiction. You know, and then by the following July, the end of July, I've been arrested and I'm going to prison. I've been on a flight to Jamaica and I've come back with substances in my luggage, and I've been arrested, and I'm going to Holloway for a long time. And when you look at it and you can't quite believe that this is what happened, but that's exactly how it
in
happened.
such a short space of time as well.
Yeah. But it is a short space of time, and not because it started like 18, 19. It's the trouble of it, if you like, the pain of it, the trauma. It starts way back when, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The inability to speak up, the inability to say what's going on, what's wrong, what you're struggling with. The fact that I don't recognise that leaving my child behind is going to have an impact on me. Like, that's a sign something's not okay, isn't it? And that nobody around me says, "I'm sure you're going to be all right with that, your daughter, because she means something to you, doesn't she?" And nobody in my vicinity had that thought. Like, they were all with the idea that, yeah, they'll be all right. She's with your mum. Everything will be fine. And I think, well, given that I was a foster kid in care, detached from my own birth family, you can see. Well, of course. Why would you have that? Why would it occur to you that a child would matter so much to their birth mother that their birth mother would stick around? I didn't have that pattern. So you look back and you go, oh wow, yeah, of course you wouldn't know that. When you have to start to understand yourself and, God, like, why was I making these dreadful mistakes? Well, you didn't have the template for anything different.
And I can imagine that high feeling. You've just got into this school that's out this world, and you're gonna get, and then all of a sudden, with I think that short space of time, you're heading to prison. Well, that's a roller coaster ride, isn't it?
It's dreadful. It was dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. Because, yeah, it's exactly what you said. So you look like you're going somewhere good, and then you end up like in a pit. And if you ever hear people talking about 12-step recovery and 12-step fellowships and what have you, they talk about addiction will take you to like one of three places: jails, institutions, and death. And it's maybe a bit nihilistic, but my experience was that I went to jail, and if I hadn't have gone to jail for a long time, actually, I probably would never have gotten clean and stayed clean and got on a different path, because I think the pain of using and the shame of it will keep you at it,
And I've found that a lot with people I know with addiction. The shame keeps them going, and they get themselves clean, and next time you see them, they're back on it, and it's trying so hard, but how do they fill their time when they're not using? And the boredom alone makes them keep doing it, and then they feel bad about doing it. When you're bad, you make yourself feel better by doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the age I think, well, I've done so well, I'll just have a pat on the back. I'll just have one, and it becomes a week, and becomes a week, and it's people who look down on addicts have no idea, do they? 'Cause it's like a comfy bed, so easy to get into, so difficult to get out of.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't often think about addiction being the solution for somebody's problem, but it definitely is. And if you start there, what problem is this person trying to solve? Then straight away you're in a more compassionate mindset. You're in a much more understanding, less critical mindset, because I know in my experience, and then I've been working in the sector since like 2003 now, is that everybody's trying to solve a problem. And not one person said, not one said, I wanted to be an addict. I've never met anybody that said, I wanted to be an addict.
They never talk to the careers officer at school and says.
I've, in my experience was I wanted to be out of it. Well, that was a problem I was trying to solve, because I didn't want to be in this reality. I wanted to be out of it.
You didn't want to be thinking about your daughter not being with you. You wanted to.
Oh, none of that. Absolutely.
And when you got arrested, I don't think I've ever asked you this, when you got arrested for smuggling, was it everyone else's fault in your mind at that time, or was it just the end of the road, or was it? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, because often when we get caught with our hands in the biscuit, it's Well, it's me, instead of just thinking, well, I'll roll the dice.
Yeah, so it wasn't everybody else's fault, but I definitely went down the woe is me route. Yeah, and I also went down the road of how could this be happening to me? I was at dance college. I was doing good things. How did this happen? Like, as if it just magically occurred or something. You know, this like ridiculous kind of denial about it. So actually, I've got a cool story about that, which is I think it's a cool story, but you might not. So. I've been in Holloway for, I don't know, a year or what have you. They've moved us to Brock Hill because Brock Hill re-rolled as a women's prison for a little while. And I've gone to sleep and I had a dream. And in my dream, I see myself knocking on this other cell door. And I say to this woman, Susie, I say to her, listen, we have to stop thinking about the courts and the judges and all of that. It wasn't a mistake against them. It's not that we've crossed them. It's that we've gone against our very selves. And, that's what's wrong. It's not that you broke the law or that, you know, that's not it. That's not why you're here. It's like what you've done is gone against your very own soul. Anyway, so in the morning when I wake up, I'm like, wow. That was a serious dream, and I've gone running down the way, knocking on the door, telling Susie, listen to this dream. But from that, something began to shift in me, because it was like a teaching dream of actually you did something that went against who and what you are underneath all of this. Like that's what you've done. You've done something wrong. I've done something wrong. So it's that point where you start to go, okay, you know what? Actually, I have done something wrong here. And let me begin to understand what that is, you know.
And I find that's almost like a religious or spiritual or mindfulness, whatever you want to believe in. It was you giving yourself the key to unlocking the situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Holloway, I saw a psychotherapist who said to me, let me find her words, because they were potent. She said something like, how could you abandon your child like your mother abandoned you? So I haven't been in Holloway very long at this time. I'm not in a good spot. But when this lady said this, like it landed in my body so hard. Like I never saw the woman again after that, right? But I feel like I cried for weeks. Because the pain of what she said was accurate. The truth of what she said was accurate. Like, I'd abandoned my child, but I hadn't even seen it like that. Anyway.
Sorry, can I ask, was that said in like a malice way or like, I want you to realise what you've done?
No, it wasn't with malicious intent, but it was like a cold, hard reality. You know, because I wouldn't say that to any of my clients.
That was kind of like.
But you know, people in prison don't get treated like regular folks outside anyway. There is a whole heap of kind of stigma and judgment that kind of moves towards people. But at the same time, who else was going to tell me the truth about that? So if you like, that was the wound. You've done what your mum did to you. Like, wow, horrendous. I did that. Okay, so that's the wound, isn't it? But the dream sometime later is like the beginning of a healing then, isn't it? It's like the beginning of it's a softer way of kind of beginning to own like what you've been doing, what you've been up to, and what the impact is, you know? Yeah.
But on the flip side, like you being abandoned by your mum, I once again know people who have either been abandoned by their parents or their dad wasn't there enough. So they work harder or they work away from home to provide a life that they believe their child wants. So do you think that was a kind of way of you justifying at the time?
100%.
I'm going to go and do it now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come back with some money and then me and you are going to take over the world.
Absolutely. So, you know, I thought that I was going to become a brilliant choreographer, do you know what I mean? And like we would have a lifestyle that was in theatre and arts and that would be what I was creating. And And it's okay to have that, isn't it? It's okay to have that kind of forward focus and a bit of ambition. But again, you know, like adverse childhood experiences will inhibit your kind of, like our nervous systems are set to a particular way. And unless, I understand this now, but I didn't know it then. You know, so actually high energy, kind of that aroused type state, my experience of that would have been really negative as a kid. You know, the dramas and the fighting. So nervous system's aroused, so like I can go for that. I'm really comfortable with that. But actually, moving to London and leaving your child behind doesn't require that thinking. It requires consideration, slow down, you know, much more even, rational state of mind, wise mind we'd call it today, wouldn't we? You know, less emotional mind is much more wise minding. I don't think I had any wise
We don't as kids though, do we?
I don't think I had any wise mind back then, you know. Or there couldn't have been much wise mind around me, to be fair.
But you go on impulse, and every impulse is fact, and every love is not a fling, it's love, it's passionate, and every idea is yes, this, and that's the beauty of youth and the downfall of youth.
Exactly, yeah. And if you haven't got children at that point, then it's not impacting on them, is it? Like it's you, it's going to affect. But of course, I was one of those young people with a child to look after, so still impulsive, still all of that, not responsible enough, not aware enough, not, you know, it's okay, isn't it?
But everything is a chapter in our novel, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And with those chapters, those early chapters, look what you've accomplished. And when you come out of jail, what happened next?
I couldn't dance, right? Couldn't dance. So what I'd done on my way out is trained as a fitness instructor. It was like I couldn't allow myself to dance. Dance was too important to me. Just couldn't allow myself to do it. And it felt like a big loss. So fitness instructor and teaching classes and all of that. So I was doing that. And I was teaching in this gym, and I just thought, oh my days. Like it seemed really shallow to me. And I wanted to do something that was more significant. And I saw this job advertised in the Big Issue for a fitness instructor at a rehab I was living in Yorktown, in Sheffield. And you had to be substance free. You had to be a qualified fitness instructor and a counsellor as well. And I'm having this conversation on the phone with somebody from the Phoenix. And I'm like, who has that combination of skills? A fitness instructor and a qualified counsellor. And the chap says, well, if you want to do this role with us, that's what you have to have. So those days, super, okay, that's what I'm going to do then. Well goes down. So I started on the level 2 counselling course, the 10-week counselling course. And so then 4 years later, I finished university with my diploma in counselling. And that's how I got into the kind of the therapeutic kind of work, really. And then I moved down here in 2003. So within 4 years of getting released, I'd got my daughter back. It took me a year to win my daughter back. And that was a long court process, you know, like proving that I was okay now and stable and safe and secure and could care for her and nurture her. And it's funny because you mentioned something before about parenting, and I was thinking about, I used to read books on parenting because I was convinced I didn't have a clue. Yeah.
I think we've all read that.
And I remember this barrister saying to me, you know, you're very cerebral about your parenting. And me saying to him, well, what else would I be? Do you know what I mean? I've got to try and get something from somewhere. And so managed to my daughter returned. Went to college, went to uni, got my counselling diploma. That was a big deal. And then started work, yeah.
You've got to love that can-do attitude. Obviously, you had since a child, and it's carried you through life. Going, all right then, I'll do it. And that's the kind of thing you don't want to be beaten out for your life, isn't it? And that's the kind of thing that, you know, it's got you into trouble, but it's also catapulted you into success, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, and trouble.
But it's great how these little phone calls, like phoning that job application up and him going, well, actually, you've just got to have those qualifications, can send you on that path.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
just reading that article and then phoning that person up, and if that person had gone, well, actually, you're just not qualified, or kind of, no, that's what you need.
Yeah.
Right, let's go and get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because it is the things that we think don't matter. For him, he just would have got on with his day. It's nothing, But for me, it totally changed my direction. Yeah.
And I think that's what anyone who's young, who's listening to this, or if you're a parent of someone who's young, we say to our kids, so what are you going to do the rest of your life? I don't know. Well, you've got to make up your mind because you're leaving school next week.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff through love, to careers, to friendship, are by accident, aren't they? Mm-hmm. You have your best intention of doing something, then you bump into someone, a good person or a negative person, and that interaction can change your life, and it's not always for the worst or for the better, or even from the worst of situations. Good things can grow from it.
Absolutely.
And I think a bad situation is only bad, truly bad, if we don't eventually move away from it, and if we don't learn something from it.
You know what, Kev? That's really important what you've said there, that you can meet those people in your life who are negative or positive people. And we've always got this mantra of, well, just avoid the negative people and stick with the positive. But actually, I think you need to change it to, you're going to meet these people whether you like it or not throughout your life. For instance, my daughter at the moment, she's got a couple of boys within her school who keep calling her names. And it gets her really down, as it would. She's a 12-year-old, nearly 13-year-old girl, and you know what boys are like. They'll pick on your weakness or what you perceive to be your weakness, whether it's you've got big ears, big lips. I keep telling her. I'm always picking on you, you know exactly how she feels, don't you? But I keep saying to her, it doesn't actually matter. You need to change your mindset to realise that is not you, because they don't know you. They might know your name. Yeah. But they don't actually know you, and they don't know what you're about, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you have to. I think we have to do that with everyone now, no matter what your experience is or who you're meeting. Don't let it affect you.
I think that's kind of one of the hardest things about being a parent, isn't it? Because we teach our children to love, to be kind, to have empathy, and we bring our children up in the best way that we possibly can. And when that first so-and-so, I'll only call him a so-and-so, but says that, and it breaks the thing that we love more than anything's heart, well, how do we go to brace them for that? And you're right, it's being strong for them, reassuring them. The only way that I learn how to get through tough dilemmas is by going through them.
Yes.
It's great, Mommy, Daddy, Uncle Kev, telling you a story, but the greatest way of learning from something is doing it.
Yes.
And that's not to encourage that your children go and get into drugs and fight. And but let's face it, our kids aren't angels. They are going to have these things. I think all we can do for them is believe them and be there for them when they need to talk.
Yeah, and like I say, I think it's turning, make them realise to turn those, what if it's negative, to turn that into a positive reaction on your side. Because you will not, like, again, my daughter's situation, it doesn't matter if she goes to the teacher and tells that teacher, the teacher may go and tell that boy off and do whatever, that may happen, but that boy's still going to be a bully. He's still going to pick on people. That's just kind of in his nature. It's hard to change someone else's, not in his nature, that's wrong, that's something he's learnt. And it's hard to change that person. His teaching. It's hard for me to change his teaching. I don't know the boy. I don't, So we have to change the way my daughter thinks about what that person says, and it has to be changed into a positive way, and it has to be changed that it doesn't matter because that's not you anyway.
Yeah.
You can't change everyone's world, can
No.
you? But you can change our children or the people in our lives or our world, aren't we? So, we can't change everyone, but we can change certain ways they perceive the rest of the world.
Well, again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, to show we change people's worlds. whether we realise it or not. We might have these ambitions to begin with to change the whole world and make the world a better place, but in reality, there's not many people in your lifetime that will do that. There is people out there who do, but there's not many. So change the people around you who matter. Change the world for the better for them.
There's a couple of things that are kind of standing out in what you're both saying. There's this idea that of fostering resilience in our kids, and I think the best way of fostering resilience is to be able to tolerate rupture in relationship and repair. So in my family, like, rupture was a real big problem, and there wasn't a lot of repair, and repair didn't really happen. So then rupture becomes something that's not okay and you're afraid of.
Could you explain rupture?
So I mean, like a breakdown in the relationship, a rupture in it, a split in it, a falling out. The kid shouted at me at school. There's, the teacher doesn't like me anymore. And whereas I think if kids can see that there's an example of, we can disagree and we can get back together, and we can disagree and we can get back together. So, kids do stuff wrong that we say as adults, we say that's wrong. How do we deal with and address that? So I remember said to you, my grandson rang me the other day to tell tale on his dad. But obviously, when I saw them the next day, like, that was totally repaired. Whatever his dad had said to him was 100% forgotten, and they were like the best of buddies again. So the break had been repaired. But if you'd listened to my grandson on the night, you would have thought it was the end of the world. That was it. It was all over. So the example of, we can disagree, we can be wrong, and then we can get back together and be right. And actually, fundamentally, there's some acceptance going on of you as a human being that's more than that. So I think there's that we don't, because we're so often broken ourselves, we haven't slowed down to do our own healing. Then we're raising our kids, and we haven't done the work, have we? Not everyone's had the chance to spend time in jail and get therapy, or not everyone's had a chance to sit in the rooms of recovery and get a whole heap of support around them. Most regular folks are just trying to do their best with a lot of damage behind them, when they looked at the ACEs to see how much of the population has got 4 or more ACEs, it's really high.
What, could you explain what ACEs?
Adverse childhood experiences, like things in their background, like a parent with mental health, a parent with an addiction, physical neglect, emotional neglect, physical abuse. There's 10 different items, and loads of people have got that in their history. Who, like we were saying before, people who say they've never recognised that they've got this in their history, or that it might have been problematic in any way. No recognition that they might be suffering and what have you, but they've got it.
And it doesn't have to be things like that. I think about my own family again with that, and my 2 eldest and what they experience. Because my youngest disability, us time away from home and time, that's all trauma.
Yeah.
It's not trauma that's put on them on purpose or through arguing or through, domestic violence or anything like that, but it is trauma, and it will affect their future.
Yeah, absolutely. So because you're a dad with awareness of it, like, there's already space, isn't there, for the healing to be an ongoing process as well alongside it. So the flip side of it is that if there's a resilient, a protective factor in a child's life, then that makes all the difference, isn't it? And it does make all the difference as well. So, and the other piece that was kind of standing out for me was this concept of anti-fragile, that something is strengthened by being tested. It gets stronger by being bent. It's not more damage, it's actually strengthened by being tested. And I think, how do we foster some of that? Because like you said, there are going to be bullies at school, There are going to be kids who are horrible. They're still at work with us.
That's it.
They're in our offices, all around the country. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad feelings that you don't like.
You're going to meet people you don't like.
You're going to meet people that you don't like. You're going to meet people who don't like you.
You're going to have bosses that don't like you, who are going to not necessarily bully you, but certainly tell you what to do.
Yeah. There are times when you're going to be undervalued, underappreciated, disliked, and guess what? Sometimes it'll be all over the world on Facebook and Instagram, and everybody will know all about it. Like, And what happens is, we were saying it, sometimes people faint in the face of that. They're so distraught. They're so, we have to teach kids. We have to teach ourselves to cope, don't we?
What kind of exercise would you think for that? Encourage them to try and realise just because they've failed, it doesn't mean they're a failure. But encourage people to get outside the comfort zones.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, because we've come to this cotton ball society that everyone's a winner, and we're not all going to be winners. I've lost a lot more times than I've won, but it made the win so much sweeter.
Yes. So that's a really good example of something that you can teach your kids and other people around you. It's like, failing is okay, losing is okay. Losing doesn't make you a loser. And that's what we do, isn't it? We get confused with doing and being and who I am and what I do. Two separate things. But equally, we teach our kids that as well, don't we? Like, if they're doing something that we don't appreciate, that we tell them that they're bad and naughty and they are wrong, and we put the identity of wrong and naughty on them? Or do we teach them that what they're doing isn't right, but they're still fabulous? Like, they're still the best thing since sliced bread, and it's okay to get things wrong and we can learn to do stuff differently. But it's a subtle distinction, isn't it?
We had a lady, Louise from Willow Daisies, and she was talking about emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And she says how she had it through her father, and then she got with a partner who did the same. And she says to her kids, when your daughter does something, you go, "Are you proud of yourself?" So you're using that, "Are you proud of yourself?" in a negative tone.
Yes.
And then your natural thing is like, "Darling, I'm so proud. Daddy is so proud of you." So she's valuing my praise instead of saying, "How do you feel?
Yeah.
Are you proud of yourself now?"
Yeah.
And it's great to say Daddy's also proud of you and Nanny, but it's like, "How do you feel?"
Yeah.
"I feel good."
Yeah.
Well, isn't that love?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having praise from me, us three,
Yes.
and what Lee's always telling me, who really gives a monkey's what anyone else thinks you can? Are you happy?
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a lesson we could teach as well.
Yeah. I agree, yeah.
And I think like Facebook, and one of my good friends explained this to me, because can you imagine going to Bromley Civic, standing there and telling everyone where you'd have for dinner and everything? Some people will turn and go, "Oh, it's Kev Dillon, I like him, I recognise him from the boxing." Well, most people are going to be turning around going, "I don't give a monkeys." But we see that on Facebook, because, "Oh, well, why isn't all 200 people I've invited to my party paying attention?" Your little stories, most people won't care about it.
Yeah.
But don't be offended.
Yeah. It's not real, is it? It's not real, but we've ascribed a whole heap of meaning and power and significance to social media. And, the kids are really struggling with it, aren't they? They're really, really struggling, because it looks like this is their reality. Actually, their credibility is resting upon, their connections and their likes.
I mean, I don't know about you, but earlier I was saying we're so glad that social media wasn't there. You know what I mean? Because it must be so hard to fight the urge. It's so easy to go, "Well, just turn it off." You know what I mean? But if you've been brought up with it and that's your right arm,
Yeah.
it must be so difficult, hasn't it?
It's almost like us being grounded and not being allowed to go out and see your friends
Yeah.
Yes.
when you're 14, 15, 16.
Yes.
It was devastating, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You got to stay in for a whole night.
Yeah.
So turning your child's phone off, it's the equivalent.
You
Yeah,
turn the phone off and
absolutely.
kick them out into the street now, don't you? "Let me back in, Dad!" "No, go make friends." But I mean, like, so you've come out, you've cleaned up. I mean, who would believe that 16-year-old that first run away and then going there? I mean, and all the wonderful thing you're doing now. Do you want to tell everyone what you have achieved? I mean, you've done lectures.
Yeah, so I've lectured at university. That was pretty cool. Oh, that's another story. I do spoken word, do poetry and stuff.
Yes.
So I moved to the West Midlands in 2003, right? And I'm doing a little bit of poetry here and there. And I go to this poetry event in Birmingham, and the woman who's leading the event, she's asking me about what I do and what have you, and I'm like, oh, I just qualified as a counsellor and I moved down to the West Midlands and working in drug treatment services. And she was like, oh, there aren't many black counsellors. It'd be really cool if I introduce you to my friend who's a lecturer at Birmingham University. So she passes my number on to this chap. After a couple of weeks, I haven't heard anything, so I follow it up. It's a bit of that can-do stuff, but you don't realise it, do you? But anyway, so I chase it up. He says, I've given your number to the social work degree course coordinator. Fine. I get a call a couple of weeks later, so it's 2005 now. I get a call a couple of weeks later from this lady who is the social work degree coordinator, and she's saying, you know, talking to me about what I do, and I tell her, you know, I've been lecturing at Greenwich and I'll come and, you know, do this diversity and social work, and she's really interested in what I'm offering, and she invites me to do the whole day instead of just the morning. So I'm thinking, fabulous, I'll take a day's annual leave and I'll get paid for the day teaching at the uni. And at the end of the call, or coming to the end of the call, she says, I need to send the booking paperwork to you. Can I get your full name, please? So I say Cheri Gillings. So she says, Gillings? Where are you people from? And I say, oh, they're from Liverpool, you know. She says, no, where are your people from? And I said, oh, my dad was Jamaican, he lived in Liverpool, my mum was Irish. She said, what do you call him? I said, oh, his name was Marvin, but he was called Roy. And she said, Lord God, may I talk to my cousin? Right, it's 2005. I took my dad's name in 1998. Changed my surname to Gillings. That was like this reclamation, restorative act. And it looked to me in 1998 like that was my decision. I was reclaiming my dad's name, not knowing 7 years later, as a result of, you know, being at a poetry event, having my number passed on. You know what, Kev? Family was in Birmingham, Tipton, Sandwell, Warsaw. So, Bromsgrove. So imagine that, right? Little old me has landed in the West Midlands, you know, for work, for my job. And it turns out that the Jamaican side of my family is all around here.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh my days. Listen, the next day I didn't come out of my house because I thought, I had this belief that questions kept us alive. And somehow in my experience, you know, this search for, you know, who am I, what is the point of, it seemed like it was an important thing, like it kept me alive. And so because now I knew, oh, I might get hit by a bus. I'm not coming out the house, and I didn't come out the house the next day. Anyway, so like I've since met like, you know, Novelet and the family and cousins, and like, imagine that there's cousins all around me. Imagine that, all around. So this was the first time when I got a sense of there was more to me than like the broken story of my Irish birth mother who couldn't keep, you know, it's a totally different narrative. And the power of that. For it not to be a La La Land narrative, but to actually look at your blood family and go, look at my family, they do this and they do that. And that's what they do. And that's what they do. And this is in my bloodline as well. So that was transformative as well. Like I've been blessed, haven't I? I'm telling you these stories, and like even as I tell you, I'm like, wow. Like you can't make that stuff up. You can't. What were the odds, right? Like I've been guided or maneuvered, or you know, some power in life has helped me along without a doubt. You know.
I mean, I love Cheri's poems, and Cheri's been on our podcast twice now, and she does them on there. So please go to our archives, listen to them. They are brilliant, and you can find Cheri on Facebook. And she's done some brilliant poems. And on about your poems, you've just started a new poetry class, haven't you?
Yeah, so there's a wonderful woman in Stourbridge called Debbie, and she has she had a market stall at Smithfield Market. I think she's soon going to open a shop as well. And she's one of those community connectors, brings people together. Anyway, she started a writing project on grief. So she invited me to this project, and so we've been meeting every week for about the last 5-6 weeks at this little shop in Stourbridge called I'm Lucky, and it's this gorgeous store anyway. So we meet there, and we write about grief, and we tell stories about our experiences, and we're gonna put something together for Grief Awareness Week. We think actually it'll probably end up being like a small book that we collectively produce, but it's just a wonderful thing. And like, this is another one of those moments where you go, look at this well of creativity that's right here on your doorstep, and all these women with amazing stories and histories, and hey, right here on your doorstep. And like, how long have I lived in Stourbridge? I didn't know, but it was a chance meeting.
Well, me and Kev have lived around this area all our lives, and there's still people now who contact us, or we find them through doing the podcast and the radio show and whatever. And the history and the people around here, it's just fascinating, isn't it, Kev? The great people, the people who are doing great work out there with mental health, with disability, with the things that we kind of advocate. But it's amazing that how good these people are, and how much they sacrifice to help other people.
And it's what I've been so proud of with you, Bruv. It's finding these things, and whether you like poetry, whether you like planting potatoes, there's so much goodness out there, like we started earlier. But unfortunately, we don't see and hear this on Midlands today. There isn't an advert in between Strictly Come Dancing or on Celebrity saying there's a helpline there if you need it, or there's like-minded souls out there.
Yeah.
And that's what I've really, really enjoyed doing with this. Finding whatever, and I mean whatever you're into, there's other people that are too.
Yes.
And there's like-minded souls. So we've never got to feel alone in this world.
Yes.
Sometimes we're drawn to bad people, and maybe that'll serve its purpose for that time. But we haven't got to feel alone, have we?
No.
And on the journey I'm still on, and all three of us are still on, we're still learning, still making new friends, and opportunities will knock on the door. It's up to you whether you want to do them. I mean, we're on about grief. There's no wrong way or specifically right way to grieve, is there? And I feel like we were saying off there at the start, it's Rob Rolls, one of our ex-boxers, he 2014 died. And, people pop into your head, they go, blooming heck, it's been that long, or someone will die a year ago. And I think the build up to the funeral, when someone dies, you're phoning them all the time. Maybe the week after the funeral, but then it's, well, get on with it now. And certain people, you're saying about your mum, or certain people you think, I'd love to phone you now. Or I can't remember the last time that, with your mate, and you go, I can't remember the last time I had a belly laugh like me and so used to have. And grief pops up every so often, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think that we don't talk about death and dying enough. And given, last 2 years, the pandemic and what have you, I still don't think we're having the conversation. It's there's something taboo about having that conversation, isn't there? I remember when people were not allowed to say goodbye to their loved ones, when they couldn't be present for their loved ones, and as they were passing over, and there was lots of that in the news. But it's just something that we just don't talk about enough.
I think it's almost because you don't want to upset people as well. But I think you've got to realise you can talk about it and still laugh. And that takes time, to be fair. I've had close friends die, and to begin with it is just raw. But I think the conversation needs to be a about the memories of the good and the memories that do make you laugh and that kind of thing, as you know, to get that conversation going. Because if you're talking about death and things, automatically you slump and you don't feel good about talking about it if it's raw in your own head.
So you know this, it's okay not to be okay band. Like, so we got these on our mental health first aid course, didn't we? And I'm always wearing it, and people are always asking me about it, especially the young, especially the young lads at work, actually. And I think that because we're conditioned, we've learned to say, "Oh, it's not okay to upset people. It's not okay to be upset. I don't want to upset you." We're going exactly against that, like us making it okay to be upset, because it is okay to be upset. And if you don't flinch at my upsetness, you make my upsetness okay. If you flinch, I'm going to push it all back in again. Yeah? And what we need is more people to be accepting of it's okay to not be okay. If you bawl your eyes out, it's okay. I'm not going to be afraid of it. But the journey to that place, like as a nation, and like we have to do that in our own little families and then spread it out and spread it out and spread it out. But that's the whole principle, isn't it? Of it's okay to not be okay. It's like if we took that to its end, it would be perfectly okay to talk about death and dying and for you to bawl your eyes out.
And I think
I almost feel like ending the show on that, to be quite honest. It's that good. But it's right, I've never thought about, because it's okay to not be okay. It's all about mental health and asking the question twice. I've never thought about it in the wider scheme of that.
Yeah.
You kind of think about it in the suicide, say, in the mental health, but actually it's right. It's about every conversation.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to do that. It's okay. It's okay to talk about everything.
Yes. Yeah.
It's okay to be upset.
Yeah.
it's okay to be human.
Yes.
And it's funny. I mean, I've got to get this in because it's we talked about it so of a Christmas around the corner, and on the human tip, I'll be also there. But it's like last Christmas, all we wanted was Mum and Dad, Uncle Richie, Grandma to come around the house, and we're all saying, "Oh, next Christmas, we don't need to spend as much money. As long as we've got each other, Bav, that's all we need." And we've already forgotten it, haven't we? It's back into Black Friday, consume, we must buy. And do we, guys? Last year when we were saying Father Christmas's elves can't make as many presents this year because of social distancing, and this year we seem to have forgotten all about it. It's just, we haven't got the money, but spend. It's next year's problem.
Yeah.
Let's just remind ourselves what we need. And what we need is each other. And as long as we've got each other, or be it just one other person, whether they live on the other side of the world, we can phone, or if you are lucky enough to have loved ones, get them around while we still can. Because Christmas, it's about giving and receiving love, and just don't spend, give time, give love, give comfort. And I think that's all anyone wants for Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah.
Well,
You got a bit longer, Kev.
got a
To be
bit
honest.
longer.
Yeah, no.
I say, Cheri, I mean, is the third time we've had first time on the radio, and you've been twice on, but every time, Lee, we learn something new about Cheri, don't we?
Without doubt. It's absolutely, every time it's a fascinating conversation, and I feel like I come away from the conversation learning more, and that's the key to having these conversations.
This is why we do it for the 2 hours, so it's not just like, have you been, tell us about your life, alright then, thank you, goodbye. We like it because they say we phone each other off air, you're mental health first aiders, and we've got a real friendship, but go back to other episodes, and it's just brilliant. And how can they find, what was it called? You started as well. I'm listening.
Oh yeah, so the listening posts. We're not doing it anymore, but you're right. In 2017 I had this idea that it was for Mental Health Awareness Week actually. So what could we do as coaches who have this idea, this understanding that, we experience life from the inside out. So I was like, what could we offer that like everybody else wasn't doing? And I just had this idea to let's rock up and listen to people, and let's do it anywhere and everywhere. And we had I think we had 52 coaches take part. Shopping centres, workplaces, park benches. We had T-shirts on that said "I'm listening," and just making space for people to talk, because more than anything, being listened to is like the best medicine, isn't it? You know, it just is. I know it's so simple and seems like such a cliche, but if you can be quiet and let somebody take the space, it's magic.
We've said that many times ourselves, and then I think that's one of the in our support group, that's one of the main things we try and advocate in there. If someone is talking, let them finish talking, and then if you do have advice for them, give them after they've said their piece, instead of, because we all try and give advice while that conversation's still going on. And there's nothing wrong with giving advice, and there's nothing wrong with ignoring it at the same time, but let's let people finish their conversation before you are jumping in and offering that.
I always think that unsolicited advice is really unhelpful, because your best solution would work for you, but it wouldn't work for me. And if I tell you what my best solution is for your problem, I just have an idea that you know what's best for you.
I understand what you're saying, but I also think it may spark a thought in someone's head to then try something. So, your advice might be, well, actually, why don't you go to and see this counsellor? And that might, actually, I hadn't thought about doing that, so I will go and see it. It might not work for me, granted, but it's, you've got to try these things to know.
Yeah. So there's some neutrality in that, isn't there? Like, there's this offer, you could do this,
Or I've tried this.
Yeah, because you know what? Sometimes, Kev, you've probably seen this as well. People offering advice and then getting upset with you for not taking their advice.
And aren't we hypocrites and offer advice that we don't take ourselves?
Absolutely. Like, I can barely change my own mind, let alone try and change anybody else's.
There's that old saying, do as I say, I know what I do, otherwise you'll be where I am. But Cheri, very quickly, we've got about 30 seconds. Have you got any quotes or sayings that have helped you get through your life?
Oh, man. Yes. So I've said this one to you before. It's by Nina Simone, and she says, you have to learn to leave the table when love is no longer being served.
Thank you as always for coming on. Thank you for listening. Till we see each other next time. Take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra,